today I'm working on my Princesses in Pants series. Previously I've done this digitally, but I really wanted to work traditionally, and I'm glad I did. I'm pleased with how it turns out. I really enjoy pencil and marker and that sort of thing. I decided to show you a little bit of my sketching process before I worked on what was going to end up being the final illustrated piece, mainly because I have a certain amount of regret that I didn't end up going with this pose. I switched it so that the horse was coming towards the viewer, and while I don't think it's bad and I'm pleased with how the final piece turned out, this one was just super dynamic, and I love the way the horse's legs look in this one. But I wasn't entirely sure that I could draw my princess twisted around like that and not just completely mess it up. So I changed it. You guys, I tried to make this a draw with me video. I really did. I recorded my sound and tried to talk while I was drawing, and I gotta tell you, I failed so badly. I cannot stay on topic, and I cannot draw and speak at the same time. There was so much hand waving, non-productive hand waving, and also so many just tangential diversions to what I was saying. I was not talking about what I was drawing, nor was I talking about relevant subject matter to what I was drawing. It just was not working. So I guess I'll need to practice that more. In the meantime, you get voiceovers, and that's just how we're going to do this. I'm always of two minds about whether or not I should show you that intro layout process of sketching. On the one hand, it's very difficult for you to see that. But on the other hand, I do think that the layout process is really critical for the finished piece. So I don't know, you tell me what you think. Should I show the layout process even though it's kind of difficult to see, or should I ditch it and just go straight to the part of the sketching that's mostly visible? I don't know. The other big question I have for this piece, so I turned it around so that the horse was coming towards the viewer, which again, like I said, I don't regret. I really liked how the horse's legs were in the sketch layout. But the other thing that I struggled with was the positioning of my archer's leg. The reason you see me reaching across the screen so frequently is that I did use a lot of references for this. I used a reference for the horse and also for bareback horse riding. I mean, I guess you could ride something else bareback bear riding. That would be a thing. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. God, I can't even stay on topic when I'm doing a voiceover. I did use a lot of references for this, but I could not find anyone writing precisely at the angle that I was working with. So it's sort of a composite of a lot of different things. Honestly, I really wanted to leave her leg hanging down the way it is right now, but I could not figure out how to appropriately place that with the horse's leg. It wouldn't actually be an issue for a rider because they're farther back on the horse. So theoretically her toe would be tucked behind the leg, but then it would look like it was actually, I don't know. It ended up looking like she was kicking the horse in the knee, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So you'll see later I lifted it up, but then the foreshortening is really weird, looking from like knee down to ankle. I'm not good at that. I need to practice. But anyway, in general, I ended up being happy with the layout of this. You'll see later on in the sketching process, I absolutely struggled with the size I was making her head and her face. I'm really bad about that. I myself have a large head, which I don't have a problem with, but it's not as large as I tend to draw my cartoony characters. And I think the reason I end up doing that so frequently is because I very much have this feeling that heads and faces are important, and I focus on them so much, I just draw them really big. But it was just way too big. It was like her face looked like she was gonna fall off that horse because her lips were weighing her down. And then also the hand that she has up by her face. It was proportioned to the size face that I was aiming for originally, and then when I scaled that face down, it was like, wow, this hand is way too big. But it was okay in the end, after much tweaking. I mentioned that I did a lot of research for this. I did not just mean reference photos for horses and mounted riders. I actually went and looked at where we think mounted archery originated, which was in Assyria, which is just an old name for the Middle East if you go back far enough. That entire area of the world that surrounds the Mediterranean on the various sides has a lot of cultural overlap. So depending on when you're talking about Assyria, you can be talking about a bunch of different people. But I just went with it. I was not going into a deep dive in the history of mounted archery. But what I did was I looked up Syrian fashions, and I was so incredibly pleased. First of all, apparently skirts and loincloths and wraps were pretty standard. I mean, there were different styles between men and women, but they were standard across the genders. And it was so colorful. Like, apparently huge amounts of dye were used, and I'm just so pleased about that. I think ultimately I probably did not push the intensity of color as far as I could have, and that's more because of me. I tend to shy away from using super vibrant colors, at least on purpose. I have been known to accidentally use a super vibrant color, but in general, I don't intentionally set out to do it. But I love the amount of dyes. And then what happened was, for people who were dressed in what at least to me appeared to be military garb, they would have these short wraps that mimicked the skirts and loincloths of sort of the rest of the population, and then they had leggings that they wore. Now, I'm sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that they did not have spandex, so I don't mean leggings in the modern sense, but these were tight pants that they wore underneath their little skirt wraps. So, I mean, huzzah! And obviously, that would be super necessary, right? Because if you're going to be riding a horse, you do not want chafing. You cannot be thinking about aiming at enemy combatants and worried about the chafing that you're getting on your thighs. So, super practical, while at the same time allowing them to have these draped wraps that were covered in fringe. So, yay, Assyria! You guys are my new fashion icons. Inking is honestly the least interesting part of any speed draw, because if you've been paying attention during the sketching phase, you really don't need to watch that again. So I've sped it up for you. my laptop has now decided to start making a great deal of noise with its fan. So, you know, for those of you who enjoy a bit of white noise to go along with your voiceovers, I'm happy to provide that for you. One of the things that I really enjoy about the Mediterranean is that it shows how silly this idea that we have that racial phenotypes are bordered by or bounded by countries or continents, how silly that idea really is. Because sure, like the closer you get to the North Pole, generally the paler skinned people are, and the closer you get to the equator, generally the darker skinned people are. But there's a sliding shift that goes up. It's not like all dark-skinned people are from Africa and all pale-skinned people are from Europe, and there's some demarcation line where if you're born above it, you're gonna come out pale, and if you're born below it, you're gonna come out brown. Like, that's just not, So I went with a sort of mid-tone for my princess in pants because I think that tends to be the predominant skin color in the area around the Mediterranean, regardless of whether you're technically in Europe or Africa. I did not, before I went with this skin tone, consider the horse. Nor, conversely, did I consider the princess when I was choosing the colors for my horse. This was foolish. I could have gone darker with my princess. I don't think I would have made her, white. But I could have gone darker with my princess and paler with my horse. I could have gone darker with my horse and kept my princess the same. But I did not. I chose browns with yellow undertones, again, based off of a reference for her. And then I just went straight up and chose red brown, which I believe is called bay, but I'm not a horse person, so I don't know, for the horse. And I wish that I had thought more about that. I am actually pleased with how the horse came out. I think it's nice. I am pleased with how her skin came out. I think that's nice too. But I wish I had given them more contrast between each other, because sometimes in art, you should draw things more unrealistically so that they have a greater visual impact. Speaking of paying attention and not coloring everything the same color, this is the one thing I really regret. I wanted her head crest and breast piece to look like they were leather, and so I chose a pale leather color, or a pale brown that I thought would do well for leather without really considering it, and it blended so much with her skin. I felt like I had to change it, which then made it dark, and I really hadn't wanted it to be that dark, and so I do regret that quite a bit. I decided that this needed some motion lines. I didn't want to just leave it on a white background, but I'd spent so much time coloring in the horse, I didn't really want to color like a giant solid color in the background. So I did some lines, picked out a green gray, because I felt like I had a lot of warm tones and I wanted something a little bit cooler for motion. Drew that on in. And then I was looking at it, and there were little places where I messed up the outline. So I decided I was going to go in with a heavy black outline just on the outer edge to separate everything. Ooh, there I messed up though. I should not have done the bowstring that way. I fix it later though, you'll get to see when I pull out my white gel pen. But I really like the way the hard black outline cleaned up the line work, and also, cleaned up the coloring work actually, I guess. and also made it pop off the page. So here she is, my most recent princess in pants, the mounted archer. I do like her, and I like her horse. It's a drawing of both of them, really. Maybe the horse is a princess too, but, you know, she's not wearing pants, because that's not a thing that horses do. If you like my art, or the art of any artist here on YouTube, please consider liking and subscribing. It really does help. Thanks!